Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar hosted by the Retirement Advantage. Today, we're going to be providing a tutorial on how to electronically file your year-end census data using Plan Sponsor Link. My name is Bill Sunigal. I'm the Marketing and Communications Director for the Retirement Advantage. Today's presenter is Jeff Copini, a Client Relationship Manager for TRA. Before we go any further, I just wanted to review some of the functionality of a GoToWebinar. We encourage your active participation throughout this session. Right now, everyone's on mute just to avoid any background noises that may distract you from listening to the webinar. You do, however, have the ability to submit questions using the chat or questions pane located near the bottom of the control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. You can enter your questions and comments in either of the boxes throughout the presentation. Your questions will be answered at the end of the webinar during the Q&A session. I would now like to hand off the mic to Jeff.
Thanks, Bill. Bill mentioned my name is Jeff Copini. I'm a Client Relationship Manager with the Retirement Advantage. I've been with TRA for going on 2 years now, but I've been in the retirement industry handling plan administration for going on 15 years. What we're going over today is a process called the year-end data collection. And the year-end data collection is a process for how TRA gets information on your company's 401k plan so that we can do complete and accurate year-end administration of the plan, which includes compliance testing and also Form 5500 reporting. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining today. I know year-end's a busy time for everybody, so I appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us on the call. What we're going to go over first is how initially you were notified about the year-end data collection. And I have a sample of an email that most everybody should have received by now. If you haven't, you always can contact your client relationship manager. If you haven't been notified of the year-end data collection, you can always reach them at 888-872-2364. I have a copy of an email that we use. It's the template for the email that we use for the year-end data collection. And the subject of the email is going to be year-end data collection file and have your plan name listed. The contents of the email will go over that the year-end data collection is available for you to fill out. We also provide a link to the Plan Sponsor Link website where you're actually going to go to log in and complete the information that we're looking for. And hopefully we get this information completed and sent back to us by the end of this month, if possible. If it's not possible to get it to the end of the month, always have that conversation with your client relationship manager to set expectations for when maybe the information might get submitted. And if it's not submitted, we'll be sure to follow up with you and try to help you out in any way possible. So to start off, you're going to go to our Plan Sponsor Link website, which is the screen that you first saw when we started the call today. There's going to be a field for username and a field for password. And your username is always going to be your email address. It's never going to change from that. So just make sure that you're using the email address that we have on record for you. If it's your first time logging into the site, like it might be for many people today, you're going to click the first time user link here, and you'll enter in your email address, click submit, and a temporary password will be sent over to you shortly. Likewise, if you have been on the site before, but it's been some time and you forgot the password, the same functionality applies. You're going to enter in your email address, click submit, and a temporary password will be sent to you shortly. Also, if you don't have the direct link to the site, you always can access the information directly off the TRA website at tra401k.com. And if you go up to the blue login section here, click it, you'll find the Plan Sponsor Link login. I advise a lot of the plan sponsors that I work with to save this as a bookmark, just as a quick and easy reference to get back out to the site in case you ever need to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in my username and I'm going to log in. I'm going to click sign in, and it's actually going to bring me through to the dashboard for the Plan Sponsor Link login. And the first tab that you're going to be brought to is called My Active Tasks. And you'll notice that there are other action items, plan documents, notices for your plan that might be out there. What we're going to review today is the year-end data collection. You see a couple out there, they're just for demo purposes. So you're not going to see one for 2018. You'll see one that says 1/1/2017 to 12/31/2017. I'm going to use this demo for today. And what's going to happen is it's going to bring you through, oh, bear with me 1 second, I'm sorry about that. There we go. And we'll enter the first, the year-end data collection here. And again, the first step is going to be company contact information. And as you look across the top of the screen, you can see from left to right, there's various steps along the way for completing the year-end data collection. A lot of these first couple steps are going to be company contact information, just verifying that we have the proper information from the company on record. You can see here that our company is located on Sesame Street. Our phone number is located here. If there are any changes that you need to make, you can always click on the edit icon here, and you'll see this throughout the demo, that various stages along here will have this edit icon in case you do need to update information with us and it hasn't been done so during the course of the year. If there is special information that you'd like to include with us, a lot of these steps will also have a notes section. You click on notes. You can see that you can always add additional information as you see fit to help clarify anything that you may think that TRA may need to know about the company during the course of the year. And a nice piece of functionality with the notes is that the information will all carry over until the very last step, and it'll accumulate any other notes that you may have added through some of these other steps along the way. So it's a nice place to summarize any additional information that you feel like might be important to the plan. So if the information looks correct, you'll click Save, and you'll move on to the next step. And as you can see, once we complete a step, the arrow will change to a green check mark, and that'll save your progress along the way. So if you do need to stop and come back to this at a later point, you always can do that. It'll bring you through the last step that you completed. So don't feel that you need to complete all these steps in one shot. You always can come back to the information and update as needed before you approve and send it over to us. Again, similar company data here, verifying tax ID, plan year end, type of entity, payroll frequency. You also can input your payroll provider information if you feel that's important, but it's not required. And anything with a green or a red asterisk here is just required information. So if you see any of these sections blank along the way as we go through the steps, be sure to input the information. If it looks correct, click Save and move on to the next step. Step 3 is principals. So it's just defining who are the owners of a particular business. It can be one individual, it can be 5 individuals. The ownership percentage just needs to make sure that you're totaling that up to 100. If it's a nonprofit organization, you may not have an individual that's considered an owner. You might just have the company as the owner. I've run across it a lot of times with not-for-profits like chambers of commerce or homeowner organizations. There may not be an individual that's considered the owner of a business. So in that case, you would just enter the company name, no title, and just put 100% for ownership. Again, if you need to add owners, the green plus over here will allow you to go ahead and add additional information as you see fit or as you need, and you click Submit and it'll save it. Likewise, if you need to remove an owner, you can delete information using the red circle with the minus sign here. But again, if the information looks correct, save your progress and keep moving forward. The next step is family relationships. With some 401k plans, it's important to know who are any family members that might be working there, because those family members may be considered owners as well. There's a rule called family attribution, so that let's say if a husband is the owner of a company and also his wife's working at the company, that wife is considered an owner by family attribution because her husband is the owner of the company. In our example, Jim Smith is related to Joe Smith. And again, if you need to add any additional information, you always can click Add and add that family information here, as well as if that information, if for whatever reason it may be incorrect, you can always edit the family information. And there's a drop down of most any relationship that you're going to need. Again, a lot of these may not be applicable to ownership, but it's good information to have. If any question on ownership comes up during the course of the compliance testing, your client relationship manager will be sure to reach out to you if we have any clarifying questions we need to clean up to complete your annual administration. As we move forward, next section is for other businesses owned. This step's important if the owner of the business that we're taking a look at that sponsors the 401k plan also has ownership in other businesses, you're going to want to list that information in this section here. It's important to know because there may be other companies or organizations that may fall under the umbrella of the 401k plan. So we'd want to know what additional companies may be owned in case additional questions need to get clarified about that additional business. In this company, or in this instance, ABC Company is also owned by Joe Smith, who's 100% owner in it. A lot of times we'll see companies that have the plan where the employees are located, but they may have holding companies that may not necessarily have any additional employees. That information is still important to know because if any additional employees do get added to those other businesses that are owned, they may need to be offered the 401k benefits somewhere down the line. Again, if this section is not applicable to your business, you can leave it blank and click save and move on. The contact information section is just information that's been pulled out of the TRA record keeping system and will let you know who we have listed in certain roles at the company. In our example here, we have the investment advisor as a role, the owner. You may see additional information for main contacts. If you have an accountant or an additional advisor that may help assist with some of the roles of the 401k plan, you always can have that information added as well. If you need to make changes to any of this information, you can't do that on this site. You'll want to contact your client relationship manager, or what you can do is you can always add a note that says, I need to remove a certain individual, maybe they've moved on and maybe there's a new main contact for the company. Again, if the information looks correct, go ahead and move on. And that really completes the general company information part of this process. The next question, or the next step, is an annual employer questionnaire. And again, you're going to see the red asterisks along the way of any required components that need to get filled out. And a lot of these questions are going to be yes or no type questions. They just give us additional information to be able to provide as complete and accurate a report as possible for your company as you go through this, either the first time with TRA, or if you had a 401k plan before in the past, you may have had something similar with a prior organization that was doing your TPA work at the time. This is just a all-inclusive approach that we take to hopefully gather as much data as possible for your company so that we can minimize, hopefully, the amount of questions, if we have any, that may need to get answered after this is submitted to TRA for the work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over a couple of these questions. And likewise with the previous steps, if you answer a few questions and you click save and you need to come back to this at a later point, you always can do that. Earlier on, I answered yes to this question and X'd out of this application and came back to it, and my yes was still answered here. So this question, number one, for instance, did the employer maintain any other retirement plans in addition to this plan that TRA did not provide administrative services? So that question is just in pertaining to if the company had the 401k plan, but maybe an additional retirement benefit, like an outside profit sharing plan, pension plan, cash balance plans, things along that way that the company might have had prior or still running along with the 401k plan. If you're using a different provider prior to TRA at some point during 2017, it's still the same 401k plan, so you don't need to mark yes for that section. So what I'll do is I'll mark no here. Likewise, was any other business sold or merged during the course of the year? So for our plan's instance, we're going to mark no. For the plan TRA services, were assets held to multiple providers? This sometimes comes up in questions that I've had with plan sponsors. That just means if your plan provider that you're using that holds the assets in the plan, did you have any additional assets aside from the initial investment lineup? So for instance, if your company uses American Funds has a standard lineup of funds for people to invest in, but some plans will have either outside investment providers that allow for additional assets to be like self-directed brokerage accounts is a good example. If your company doesn't have that, then you can mark no for that section. But if you do, then just list who those additional investment providers are. Your client relationship manager may follow up with you to ask for additional information in regards to those type of investment providers. Likewise, with plan assets being non-traditional holdings, You'll want to speak with your investment provider if you're not sure of this question, or call your client relationship manager and we'll be glad to help you out. Examples of this are life insurance, company stock, real estate, etc. So typically a lot of 401k plans don't have that, but if you're unsure, always check with your investment provider. They'll be able to provide you the best guidance on whether or not you have some of those type of holdings within your plan. An important section, number 7, is have all newly eligible employees been offered the opportunity to participate? Very important with 401k plans is that when somebody becomes eligible for the plan, you want to make sure that you're giving them the opportunity to choose to enroll in the plan or not enroll in the plan if they decide not to want to contribute. If they're not offered the opportunity when they become eligible, there may be certain corrections that need to be followed. And again, if that situation were to ever come up where somebody became eligible but the plan forgot to notify them, let us know that information here, and your client relationship manager will be in contact with you to have a discussion about how to best correct that. This section is not an applicable or not a required section, but previously eligible employees are immediately eligible upon rehire. And if you didn't have any rehired employees, again, it's a non-applicable section if you didn't have any rehires. But if you did have any rehires during 2017 and they've met the eligibility requirements in a prior year, when they come back to the plan, they're immediately eligible. So likewise with, or similar to the newly eligible employees, you want to make sure that you're offering those employees the opportunity to enroll in the plan when they come back. Again, if you did not do that, you're going to want to have a conversation with your client relationship manager to figure out how to best handle that search situation. And question number 9 is in reference to a section that we'll be talking about later for this employee section, and it's in regard to the employee census file. When we gather the employee census data, it's important to include all employees at the company, regardless of their participation in the plan. You're going to want to make sure that you list out anybody that was active at any point during 2017 and list their compensation and hours worked for the year. It leads to more complete and accurate year-end reporting if we get that information from you, because it'll also lead to better administration of the plan in the years to come, because we'll have a history of employees at the company. So if we ever need to call back and question a certain piece of information about a particular employee, at least we'll have that information on record. Again, it's regardless of the participation in the plan, because a lot of the reporting also that gets done with 401k plans just doesn't take into account people that are contributing to the plan, but it also takes into account people that are eligible or may become eligible down the line. Next section is in reference to other types of employees at the company. If you have these people in your organization, you want to make sure that they get listed on the census as well. Our demo example here doesn't have these type of employees, so some examples are leased employees. Collectively bargain employees are referenced a lot of times as union employees or non-resident aliens. And another required component is if any employee passed away during the plan year or went on disability for longer than 12 months during the year. Sometimes this impacts some of the employer contributions that a company might give. If you didn't have any of those circumstances happen to any of your employees in the plan, then just click no and move on. And the next section here is just in regards to any employer contributions that the company makes. In our example right here, our plan is a safe harbor plan. So safe harbor plans have to give either a employer match or a 3% non-elective contribution, either during the course of the year or at the end of the year. And if your plan does that and you didn't deposit those type of contributions during the course of the year, and you want TRA's help in calculating what that contribution would be, you would answer yes to this section here. And if you need it deposited by a certain date, you can go ahead and list the date out here. Just make sure that you're giving us at least 15 business days. As we progress through the compliance season, we'll try to work as best we can with you to make sure that we're accommodating your allocation requests as you need. Likewise with additional employer discretionary contributions. This section here is also referred to a lot of times as a profit sharing contribution. So if your company is intending on making that type of contribution, what you're going to want to do is mark either yes or no to this section. And in our company's case, we'll say yes. And if you're going to be doing if you're going to be doing a profit sharing contribution, you want to make sure that you indicate what are your goals for the profit sharing contribution? Some plans have a specific dollar amount set aside for the end of the year that they want to allocate as a profit sharing contribution that goes to all eligible employees. So you can enter in, if that's your goal, you want to allocate $100,000 to anybody that's eligible to plan. We'll calculate out who's to get what from that contribution and how much, so you can get that invested with your plan provider. If the goal is simply just to maximize the owner's contributions while minimizing contributions to everybody else, you can type in max min. Or any other goal or objective that you have for the contribution, please type it in that field. And if there's ever any questions, we'll be sure to reach back out to you in case there is anything that needs to be clarified. And same thing, if you ask what date do you plan on depositing the contribution, again, give us 15 business days roughly or so to try to prepare the allocation for you. If any questions come up along the way, that might push out that 15 business day request. But again, if there's any issues or clarifications that need to happen, your client relationship manager will be in contact. If you want more of a consultative approach to this questionnaire, feel free to always give your client relationship manager a call, and we can always walk you through this process. Again, we can be reached at 888-872-2364. And the last section of the questionnaire is just applicable to plans that were brand new to 2017, and not brand new to TRA necessarily, but brand new. This is the first year that your company started offering the benefit. If you had the plan in prior years and transitioned over to TRA during 2017, you don't need to complete this section. For plans that just started brand new during this year, question 26 is in reference to what was the actual date, the pay date that you started withholding money from employees' checks for the 401k plan. This information's important because compensation earned prior to that check date may not be eligible for some of the compliance testing that we do for your company's plan, so we may need to back that compensation out of the gross compensation. Excuse me. Likewise with number 27, for certain plans, we need to know who are employees that are going to be considered highly compensated. And highly compensated employees are anybody that is a 5% owner or more in the business, anybody that's a family member of that owner. Again, that goes back to those family attribution rules that we talked about in an earlier step. But it's also anybody that earned $120,000 or more in the prior year. So if your company's brand new for 2017 with the 401k benefit, you'll want to list out any employees that earned greater than $120,000 in 2016, because that drives who's a highly compensated employee for 2017. So likewise, moving forward for 2018, a highly compensated employee would be anybody that earned more than $120,000 in 2017. Once that information is complete, click Save. And you can move on to the next step, which is a 5500 questionnaire. And going back to the step that we were at before, if any information is left unchecked, there will be a warning sign that says a certain section hasn't been completed. You can, again, click and save your information as you need to, but it'll prompt you that maybe something is missing from that step that needs to be filled out in order to get that green check mark as showing completed. Now, the 5500 is an annual reporting for all 401k plans. It's a report or a filing that TRA is going to prepare for you, and it's going to need to be filed with the IRS. Generally, it's filed, for instance, for 2017, the 5500 deadline for filing will be the end of July, generally. And it just gives information to the IRS on this company has a 401k plan. This is the number of participants in the plan, asset balances, but then also there's some compliance type questions that get added or asked during that. And that's where we need you to help us with that piece by filling out this part of the questionnaire. Late deposits are an issue that the Department of Labor has been having a lot of discussions on, and making sure that when people have money withheld from their checks for 401k contributions, that they're invested timely into the plan. Generally, the rule for depositing contributions is that when you run a check date, it has to be invested within 7 business days. If it's done after that point, it may be considered a late deferral deposit. And if you're unsure, again, always have a conversation with your client relationship manager. Don't be afraid to ask questions. on whether or not you think you may or may not have had a late deferral deposit. If there are circumstances where there may be a late deferral deposit, your client relationship manager will go over how to correct that type of situation. For purposes of our demo today, we're going to say no, that we didn't have any of those. Another question that gets asked on the 5500 is in regards to a fidelity bond, or sometimes it's called an ERISA bond. The bond acts like insurance for the assets for your 401k plan, so it protects the plan against any fraud or dishonesty from people that are actually handling the funds in the plan. The bond coverage needs to be at least 10% of the assets in the plan as of the beginning of the year. Lots of times the bonds can be purchased through maybe the insurance provider that handles the business and casualty insurance for the company. So you may want to speak with your insurance agent to see if you have a bond in place already. Or if you know that you don't have a bond in place, you may want to contact them to see if they offer fidelity bond coverage and what you would need to do to go about doing that. What we do offer for plans that know that they don't have fidelity bond coverage, or maybe they're shopping their coverage around, is actually if you go back to the TRA website under resources, there's information on ERISA and fidelity bonds, and we work with a provider called Colonial Surety that could help you set up the bond if you don't have that in place. If you do have a bond in place, you can click from the drop down and you can elect either to have auto inflation guard, no coverage, or in the amount of, and you can put in the dollar amount of your coverage. So my plan here has a $20,000 bond, which means my assets are probably about $200,000. So that's the minimum coverage is 10% of the assets. When you see that auto inflation guard option up here, that's in reference to a particular type of bond that will adjust as your assets go up. Then your coverage will adjust to make sure that you have at least that 10% bond coverage that you need for the plan. It's a little bit of a set it and forget it type mentality. And it's a matter of convenience. If you do it in the amount of, many providers offer bonds for that. And normally that's good, just depending on how quickly your plan grows or how quickly your plan is growing. You may have to adjust that bond maybe once every year or every 2 years, just depending on how quickly your assets grow. Number 5 here is a resolution to terminate the plan during the course of the year. If you haven't had that type of resolution drafted up and you're not deciding to terminate the benefit, then you can select no. Likewise, were any assets or liabilities transferred from this plan to another qualified plan, or were assets transferred into this plan? So this section is a reference to plans that may have had any mergers that happened during the past year. If a company has purchased another company and the assets from that plan are merging into your plan, you'd want to mark yes to that section, because there is information below on that other company that's merging into your plan that we're going to need in order to prepare the 5500. If that situation doesn't apply to you, then just select no. And the last section here is if you'd be willing to be a reference for future TRA clients, you can select yes or no to that section here. And once that's complete, you click Save. And you're going to move on to the Employee Census section. This section here is where you're going to give us basically the roster information of your employees at the company for 2017. You're going to list anybody that has been active at all during the course of the year. You're going to provide us with their social security number, dates of birth, dates of hire, termination dates if applicable, rehire dates if applicable, gross compensation, contributions, and then also hours worked. Now, we have a couple of different views for this section here. You can see on the screen that our company here has a couple of employees. If your company is smaller in size, this is a nice option to use, because what you can do is you can just go ahead and you can manually add employees as you need to. So if you're not seeing an employee listed here that you need to, you can always go ahead and add maybe a new hire that happened during 2017. You can go ahead and you can add their information here and fill out the red asterisk items as you go through, and then click Save. And then they will appear here in this section. Otherwise, a nice feature of this site, and I have a lot of plan sponsors use this function, because you can export the information that displays on the website, and you can import it, or export it rather, into an Excel file. I have a sample file pulled up here. When you export it the first time, you're going to see two tabs here at the bottom, one for instructions and one for employees. And the instructions tab is nice because it gives you a lot of information on the different fields that you're going to see in this employees tab and what information specifically that we're looking for in the format that the characters need to be on the Excel file. As you go over to the employees tab, you'll see a more comprehensive view of the census information. It's easier, I feel like, to work with sometimes because you're able to see all of your company's information in a better screenshot. And also in this section, if you have new employees that you need to add, you always can add, or rather insert a row as needed. So if you have 2 new people that you need to add to the plan here, you can type in their name, SOCH, other applicable information as you go left to right across the screen. If there's no other adds, that's fine. You don't need to go ahead and add anything else. You can't manipulate the rows across the top, so you couldn't insert a column if you needed to. These are coded for efficiency purposes to make sure that when the information comes in, it's in a format that we can work with when that information gets loaded into our compliance software. Now, as you can see, and I'll go back to our plan sponsor link, you're going to see issues have been detected in employee census records. So if you click to view the issues, the Plan Sponsor Link website is always constantly scrubbing data to see if it makes sense. And if any information is missing, you'll see 2 types of issues. You're going to see either warnings or you're going to see errors. And warnings are more informational. They're not going to prohibit you from being able to submit the census information to us. You just want to make sure the information is as accurate as possible that you're entering in. Errors are things that need to get resolved before you go ahead and submit. So you can see that a number of our employees here don't have hours and they don't have compensation listed. So it's going to say an error because it's recognizing them as an active person during 2017. And if they're active during the year, it's reasonable to assume that they should have some sort of compensation or hours worked during the year. If they terminated in a prior year and that information just wasn't added, then make sure to go ahead and add that information into the spreadsheet. So if Bam Bam here terminated in 2016, you're just going to want to make sure that you update that information on the census file. And if you need to do a one-off update, you can always do that. Click, and you can type in data separation. Going back to the Excel file, what I did is I pre-prepared a census file. And what I did is I filled out the total gross compensation for the participants in the plan or for the employees of the plan. I also entered in the contributions that they made during the year. So you're going to want to make sure that that matches up to your payroll information. So we have some employees that had pre-tax salary deferrals. We had some employees that made Roth salary deferrals or after-tax salary deferrals. This plan didn't have any employer contributions because going back to the questionnaire, we're going to have TRA help us calculate our employer contributions for the year. So if you didn't make any contributions during the year, you don't have to complete this section, only if you've actually made employer contributions during the year. And then also in the last column here is hours worked. So if you have hourly paid employees, go ahead and enter in their hourly information there. If you have salaried individuals, then you use the information that you have to try to determine what type of hours they work. So if they were a full-time employee during the year, you can reasonably assume they worked 40 hours a week and then multiply by the number of pay periods they had during the year. So for instance, if they're a weekly paid company and you know Jeff Capini was a full-time employee during the year, you could do 40 hours a week times 52 weeks and enter in the hours applicable to that. You also can use that for prorating any hours that you might have. Now, once that information is complete, what you can do is you can click the import function. And what that'll do, I'm going to go ahead and close out of my file here. I'm going to click import. And it's just like attaching an email to any email that you might send out. You're going to find the file. Normally I tell plan sponsors to save it either in a 401k folder that they might have set up or to go ahead and just save it directly to their desktop. I saved it to my desktop. I'm going to click the file, click open, and it pulls the file right into the website. And it will let me know that if I have any issues, again, click to find the issues. and we'll see if we clear them up. And I only have one issue, and the data separation is before the start of the current plan year. And the only reason that's coming up is I'm using a 2018 example here, but generally because he terminated in 2017 here, you're not going to see that type of issue. So as long as everything looks accurate and complete, you can go ahead and click Save. And if you do have any warnings, it's going to give you one last prompt if you want to go ahead and click and view them to see if you can resolve them. If not, you can continue and save anyway. And as you can see here on the left-hand side, all check marks are green, which means the census file is good to be submitted to TRA. You click Sign and Submit, enter in your name, title of the business, phone number, email address, and the information will get submitted to us securely. And our support team and compliance analysts will start scrubbing the data. And if there's any questions, clarifying pieces of information that need to be addressed, we'll be sure to reach out to you by phone and by email to make sure that we get that information clarified and addressed timely so that we can wrap up your compliance reporting for the previous plan year. And that, honestly, that is it in a nutshell. Again, if you always want a more thorough or consultative approach, don't ever hesitate to contact your client relationship manager. Again, that's the reason that we are here, is to help you with these processes. It's something that a lot of plan sponsors, you're really only going to address one time a year, so that by the time you have to do this again next year, you may be unsure of how you did it in prior years. We're always here as a resource to help you complete this every year if need be. Going through it the first year can be a challenge because it's new. It might be a process that is different from how you've handled it in prior years. I've worked with a number of other third-party administrators, and this is the most all-inclusive approach that I've seen, because all the information is being asked for on the website rather than having to either fill out forms or send one-off Excel files to complete the information. So I really enjoy working with this year-end data collection process.